Hello everybody and welcome to today's episode of the Pritchard Cycling News Show, Isolation Special stroke Olympic Special stroke Pandemic COVID-19 Special. As you are probably aware, the Olympics has been postponed. Literally 2 hours after I dropped my video on Monday, they made the announcement saying it had been postponed to 2021. But we're going to look at the fallout of the Olympics, the reaction of athletes, and what it means for cycling at the Olympics. Is it going to change much? Does anybody really care? Who are the winners? Who are the losers out of this? I'm just going to talk about it for the next 10 minutes and you're going to listen. Transition. Alright, so prior to the Olympics actually being postponed, the IOC president, Thomas Bach, actually released a statement to the athletes. In this statement, what's that word you use when someone's talking rubbish? Bullshit. There's a lot of bullshit in it. But ultimately, basically, what he was trying to say was it's still too early to make a decision on whether we should postpone the Olympics. The athletes knew it, the fans knew it, everybody else around the world knew it was going to be postponed. But this guy was going off like, give us another 4 weeks and then we'll make a decision. Nah mate, everyone was ready for it to be postponed. 1 day later, statement comes out saying it is postponed to 2021. As you can imagine, there were a lot of athletes who were devastated by this. I mean, devastated is a relative term with everything that's going off at the minute, but a lot of these athletes have been training for the last Olympic cycle for 4 years. They were only months away from competing. Some athletes have been training their whole lives for this, so you can understand why some of them might say that they're devastated. But looking at the grand scheme of things, I think one, it's the right decision for both athletes, fans and everyone around the world to ensure that this thing's nipped in the bud, sorted out, and then we can have a full games, because Canada had actually announced that they were going to pull their whole team out of the Olympics. They weren't going to send their nation there, and it would have been only a matter of time before other nations followed suit. But thankfully, IOC decided to postpone it to the following year, which means, well, what does it mean? First up, let's have a look at what it means for road cycling. Now, in terms of road cycling, I don't think it's going to make that much difference, the fact that the Olympics have been delayed by a year, because when it comes to road cycling, these riders don't specifically target the Olympics. Yes, it is on the agenda, and yes, they would love to win an Olympic gold medal, but when they plan out their season, they don't just say, right, I'm only racing the 1 day of the Olympic Games. You know, they could look at a monument win as big, if not bigger, than an Olympic gold medal, potentially road race world championships, potentially even a stage win in a grand tour could be more important to them in their season than the Olympic gold medal. So they're not necessarily peaking for that one specific event, that one specific day at the Olympics. So what you tend to find is they won't put that much pressure on themselves to actually perform. Of course, hey, who doesn't want a gold medal? And potentially the only exception was Cav in 2012. He really wanted that gold medal. And look how that ended. And another thing about the road riders is that they don't necessarily look at this one event and say, we have to peak for this. Their peaks tend to be a lot. If you take how we're trying to deal with the pandemic that's going off at the minute, we're trying to flatten the curve, or at least the NHS is and everybody else is. I'm making videos. But what they're trying to do is flatten the curve of it so they don't have that peak of everyone getting ill at the same time and stretching the NHS and other medical supplies to the bone. What they're trying to do is just eke it out so everyone that needs to get seen to gets seen to over a period of time. Weird analogy, but it's similar to a road rider's peak. You don't necessarily have that sharp uptake in fitness. What it does, it just gradually builds throughout the season. They hold their peak for quite a while and then it drops off towards the end of the season, and in there hopefully they'll hit the Olympics on reasonably good form, but they'll never hit it like bosh, like a track cyclist does. It's 4 years of just being lame, mundane at best, and then the Olympics, win everything and then go back down. So when it comes to the road riders, I don't think they're necessarily going to care. They probably have just gone, nah, I still want to go for it, but when it comes to track cycling, it's a different kettle of fish. It's a completely different discipline. It's almost a completely different sport compared to road cycling. These athletes have trained their whole lives, or 4 years, on this Olympic cycle to prepare themselves, to get themselves into the best physical shape they can be. And they only get one time to do that. So if they miss their peak, if they don't train right, if they just get it slightly wrong, they could be going into that Olympics subpar in terms of form. And you might find someone who's just peaked at the right time. And hey, we're dealing in tenths of seconds. Well, maybe not when it comes to the team pursuit. It could be bloody minutes. But normally in track cycling, we're dealing with tenths, if not thousands of seconds. And that all makes the difference. So these guys have got a lot of pressure on themselves to make sure that they perform at that specific moment. And for the past 4 years, they've had that date, when they're going to Tokyo, when they're competing. It's been ingrained into their brain. And all they've been doing is thinking about that one date, training specifically for that one date. For then someone to say, yeah, we're going to postpone it, must be hard to take, thinking, am I going to be able to maintain my form? What's going to happen now? This is unprecedented in terms of Olympics, especially from probably 2004. You think of the way that especially Team GB have nailed their Olympic cycle. They can just go through 3 years of being the slowest riders in the world. But come Olympic year, bang, they're right back on top. So how's that going to affect them? We'll get into that shortly, but how is it going to affect the athlete's mentality over the next couple of weeks and couple of months when they think, right, I should be in my taper here, right, I should be doing X, Y, and Z, right now I should be the Olympics, right now is the time that I said I was going to be competing. How's that going to affect them? Is it going to affect their mentality? Is it going to affect their physical capabilities? Are they just going to take it in their stride and say, you know what, there's nothing we can do about it. I'm going to sit back, I'm going to put myself on lockdown, get my tissues, get my lube. I don't know. I don't know which way it's going to go. Now I know in all of this, you've got to say that everyone loses out of this. The fans lose, the athletes lose, but some lose more than others. And when it comes to the track cycling, one team that I think is going to lose big time on this one is the team pursuit team of Denmark. So back at the World Championships, they set about 17 world records. They were on fire. Everyone expected them to be up there. They're always up there competing for the medals. However, no one expected them to go as fast as they did, as many times as they did. And I think all the nations involved in potentially winning a medal at the Olympics at the team pursuit stopped, looked at them and went, especially Team GB, who I think are probably going to be the winners out of all this. They get another year to prepare. They get another year to develop that bike. Remember the Lotus bike? We saw it a couple of times, then we never saw it again. They didn't bring it out at World Championships. Now, was this gamesmanship? Were they trying to get one up over everybody else by saying, we've got problems with this bike, flexes too much, it does this, it does that, and we need to take it back and get it developed further? Or did they have it pretty much spot on and they went, right, we know when our athletes are flying and they're peaking and they've got their helmets on, their aero suits on, boom, we're going 3:40 for this team pursuit. Or were they genuinely like, shit, this bike's not as good as we thought it was going to be. Let's get back on the Cervelos. I don't know. I guess we'll never find out now until 2021. But anything can happen in that time. So GB can now go back to the drawing board and they can say, how the hell have the Danes got that fast? What do we need to do to catch up? Because they need to catch like 4 seconds up. And that is a huge, monumental, might not be 4 seconds, I can't bother to check. So it'll be around 4 seconds. Even if it's 2 seconds, even if it was half a second, you'd still be questioning it, saying, can they really find half a second in a skin suit, in a new pair of wheels? All right, so yeah, I might have competed in the Commonwealth Games once or twice.
I mean, that was a fantastic ride from Chris Pritchard there.
But it ain't the bloody Olympic Games. So I wanted to speak to a real Olympian, someone who's actually won a bloody gold medal. I wanted to get their take on it. Not only Olympic attendee, actual medal winner as well.
Yeah.
So I've had my say on what I think about this whole postponement of the Olympics. I've seen on Twitter that you've had your say a couple of times. Before we get into the postponement, what's your opinion on the way it's been handled by the president of the IOC?
It's been a mess, hasn't it?
Well,
I think
yeah.
He hasn't spoken with the same tone that the world leaders have, or that we're seeing on the news, and it's just seemed so out of touch. And then I think there was a lot of arrogance in his messaging. He basically said, carry on regardless, which is pretty disrespectful to athlete health when they're trying to isolate themselves in their own homes and can't train, especially the Spanish who are locked inside and can't go out exercising or anything like that. But he didn't seem to appreciate that other countries were going to start pulling out, and that's what we saw with the Canadians and the Aussies. And then to suggest that he wanted a 4-week time period in which to decide just seems unnecessary. He decided it in 2 days.
What did he expect to achieve in that 4 weeks? Like, what would have changed in that 4 weeks? The thing would have only got worse.
You can decipher the communications strategy for the IOC because it's consistently disastrous. They're very good at navigating the world of sports politics. They're not very good at navigating public opinion.
Yeah, and I guess, like, as an ex-athlete, and your friends are obviously athletes, it is the best decision to have been made. How is it going to affect athletes this year, before we talk about what's happening in the Olympics?
There's going to be a huge impact. You've got about 50% of the sports haven't finished the qualification window because so many events got cancelled in the last few months. So we've got an issue with that having to be reopened so that potential Olympians who were on the verge of qualifying still have that opportunity. And then if the postponement goes on too long, you possibly have to ask the question whether we reopen Olympic qualification to a smaller degree. But either way, I think those qualification events need to go ahead as a kind of litmus test before we go ahead with the Olympics, because the stakes are so high. You've got 11,000 athletes from over 200 countries coming together in a teeny tiny village, and in the middle of a global pandemic. It just makes no sense to host it at the moment. So the athletes will be devastated. It's going to be really hard. I think, in the lead up to 2016, I probably would have taken an extra couple months because I thought we needed it. But to postpone it by a year, it puts a huge amount of stress on your mind and your body, because that preparation and that mindset is so focused that it's hard to maintain that. But given the circumstances we're in, which is exceptional, it's kind of the least worst option.
Yeah, I was thinking back to 2016. What would have happened to you? A couple of months out from the games, this is what you especially you. Not if you take Jason, he's been there and done it before. You were getting ready to go to your first ever Olympics, and obviously go and win a gold, but you didn't know that at the time. Like, how would you have felt being in the position now back in 2016?
I would have felt really kind of lost and kind of precarious, I guess, because team selection could change again, qualification could open again, and for us, qualification was really tough. We were pretty close to not qualifying it in a few instances. And I really feel for the athletes that have to go through that. But what I think was a worse situation was when the IOC was pushing on regardless, when everyone could see the writing on the wall. There was no way it was going to go ahead. And that just leaves athletes with even more uncertainty. So at least the recent decision has reduced that a little bit. Yeah,
and have you spoke to Phil or any of the other boys about it? How are they feeling?
Pretty deflated at the moment, to be honest.
Yeah.
It's not an easy situation. Obviously there's far more people in worse circumstances as a result of this pandemic. Yeah. But I really feel for them. The kind of contingency hasn't been there. The velodrome and gym just kind of shut one day, and they had limited time to get in there and get their stuff. So questions maybe have to be asked about that. But it's disheartening. You were pinning. People often think that the Olympics is like, at worst case they think it's a couple months that you have to prepare for it.
Yeah.
And at best they think it's like a year, but it's actually like a 10-15 year project for a lot of athletes. And to have that date changed is a major adjustment.
Do you think eventually this is going to pay off for any nation when we eventually get to the Olympics? Like, take Team GB for instance. They were way behind in team pursuit, pretty much there or thereabouts in team sprint. But in terms of team pursuit, do you think they'll actually look at this now and go, oh, this is actually going to give us a bit more time to readjust, reassess the situation?
Yeah, I mean, I feel a little bit uneasy talking about who are the winners and losers, because obviously you'd prefer it not to happen.
Yeah.
But if I had to comment, and because your questioning has pushed me into such a position, I will.
Thanks.
I think this does benefit the British team, the British and Australian team pursuits especially. And possibly comes at the detriment to nations where there's a total lockdown at the moment. We're yet to see if that's going to be implemented in the UK. But, you know, as much as we think the British might be given more time, we're still heading up that curve a couple of weeks behind those nations that have full lockdowns. So it might be a short-term gain, but ultimately a long-term loss. So we'll have to wait and see. I don't think anything drastic will change, but it was pretty clear that the Aussies and the Brits got their preparation in the team pursuit wrong compared to the other nations at the World Championships. So I'm sure they maybe the silver lining to that is they've got more time to put it out.
Exactly. Well, thanks for your time, Callum Skinner, Olympic gold medalist, Commonwealth Games medalist, team sprint participant with me, Chris Pritchard.
I keep telling you, that was the highlight.